All right. Reports that the Chinese government engaging in war games off the coast of Taiwan could potentially lead to an invasion of Taiwan. Are they taking advantage of a world that is distracted by the coronavirus, or are they trying to shore up their own loss of support within the borders of their own country? Joining me now to talk about this, Congressman Ted Yoho. He represents the 3rd Congressional District of the Sunshine State. Congressman, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Hey, great to be on, Tony. Thanks for having me there.
All right, Congressman Yoho, so what are we to make of China's move there on the coast of Taiwan?
China needs to be real careful about any missteps. They have been claiming the one country, two systems, and it all hinges on the 1992 consensus, which was never a consensus. It was a meeting, and there was no agreement at the end of that. And so they're basing this on false claims, and they're trying to control a narrative that Taiwan is a part of the PRC. Make no mistake about it. Taiwan has never been a part of the People's Republic of China, which is communist controlled. And all one has to do is look at the history, and you see Shanghai Shek left after the Civil War and went to Taiwan, and Taiwan was formerly known as the island of Formosa, an independent nation, and that's where Taiwan came from.
Now, Congressman Yoho, I know you pay close attention to these foreign policy issues, and that's one of the reasons we have you on the program often, because I think, especially in the last few months where we've been focused domestically on the coronavirus, its effect, the shutdown, all of the impact that it's had on our economy, so on and so forth, we cannot take our eye off of these important moves, especially this one here by China. Now, what do you think is the major motivator here? Do you think they have a sense that the world is distracted and they can make this move on Taiwan? Of course, we also have the move on Hong Kong as well. So, I mean, they're making these moves at present. Is it because they feel like the rest of the world is distracted and won't respond? Or is this to shore up their waning support at home?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think they're both. I think primarily what they are doing is they're testing the waters. And what we have known historically about China, if you watch them, they make this felonious false claim to the 9-dash lines of the South China Sea or the East Sea that they claim as sovereign territory. They're making a claim to the Arctic, and the world agreement between nations is you have to be a nation that is contiguous with the Arctic to have any claims to it, and it's based on your sea border on that area. And they have none, but they're claiming they have near Arctic claims. And so what they're doing with Taiwan is they're trying to control that narrative that it's part of China. It is not. It is a distinct culture. The Taiwanese people identify as Taiwanese, not Chinese. The last election of President Tsai very emphatically drove that point home when she had the largest victory of any president in their young democracy. And China is overstepping its boundaries and testing the waters, and they will pay for this. And nobody wants a conflict, but what every one of your listeners and every one of us as an American can do is let's stop buying anything made in China. And it's tough right now trying to find anything not made in China, but in time, in a short period of time, you're going to see manufacturers being made anywhere. And we wrote a policy paper on this, Tony. It's called Manufacture the ABC Method, which is manufacture anywhere but China.
And this is a way that every American can participate in this, is simply by buying American or products not made in China, because that basically fuels the engine that drives that communist regime. The significance of what is taking place here, of course, the administration, I think, banning business with 33 Chinese businesses late last week, which has fueled this threat of a Cold War emerging between the two economic superpowers. But they're moving two aircraft carriers there toward the coast of Taiwan. First time these two massive aircraft carriers have been together. Did they understand, I should say, what they're dealing with in President Trump, that he is not the typical American leader that we've had in the past?
No, they don't understand that. They think America will back down. Keep in mind that since President Reagan, we have an agreement to sell Taiwan weapons for their defensive, and I got to highlight that, defensive protection. They are our 11th largest trading partner, and they're a Western democracy, and they punch way above their weight as far as a population. And China is testing the waters, and they're pushing this, and they're going to pay. They're going to pay very strongly in economic damage to their country. And Xi Jinping is trying to make the stand that he's in control of everything. You know, and you brought up Hong Kong. Hong Kong, everybody agrees, is a province of China. But China and the Communist Party broke the agreement between the United Kingdom and China, the leaders then, in 1997, where there was supposed to be a 50-year period of time for a peaceful transition where Hong Kong reverted back to China.
Right.
And it's in the process, but 22 years into it, Xi Jinping and the Communist Party have overlooked that, and they have written that agreement off. And he says it no longer abides, or they're not bound by that. And that is totally false, and that shows you that moving forward, the Chinese Communist Party, and I'm going to communists over and over again, and Xi Jinping cannot be trusted. And what Xi Jinping is doing is he's bringing the second century of shame on the Chinese people, but he's doing it through a power grab. And you ask why they were doing this. This is strictly authoritarian power grab so that he can show that he has the backbone to stand up, and their whole country is going to suffer from this.
You're listening to Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins. Glad to have you with us on this Tuesday afternoon. Congressman Ted Yoho of Florida, my guest. He represents the 3rd Congressional District. We're discussing what is taking place right now as it pertains to China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, where we see China trying to consolidate power, move on both Hong Kong and potentially militarily on Taiwan. Now, the issue here, in my view, Congressman Yoho, is I know this president has been very clear he doesn't want to entangle the United States in foreign wars. He's trying to get us out of these wars. But this is an issue of, as you point out to Taiwan, we have a relationship with that country, and I think we're bound to assist them if China makes a move on them. I mean, this could easily trigger a military confrontation between China and the United States if China is not careful.
They really are, Tony, and Chinese leaders need to really, understand what they're walking into, because they will cross their Rubicon where they can't go back, and that's something nobody wants to see in the world. And they have to understand that the Taiwanese people voted for President Tsai and had the largest winning results they've ever had, and it's a mandate by the Taiwanese people that, and the reason they did that was because she stood up so strongly against the reunification. China talks about reunification, and they talk about one China, two policies.
Right.
But when they talk about reunification, they left out a very important factor. They never consulted the Taiwanese people. They don't want that. And they have their own military, their own government system. They're a Western democracy. The flag, they have their own flag. We can go on and on and on. They are an independent nation. And I just penned an editorial that says it is time for not just us, but other nations around the world to recognize Taiwan as an independent nation. And if we put this off, there will be a conflict. But if we all stand up together, because the United States shouldn't do this on their own. This should be all Western democracies should realize that Taiwan is an independent nation. And the sooner we do that, we have drawn a line that says this is a line you don't cross, China, and China will have to respond. And the best way to get China to respond is economic pressure on them. And that's where the manufacturing outside of anywhere but China needs to happen, and it needs to happen rapidly. And we've done things with the American Jobs Cut and Tax Cut and Jobs Act, and the other incentives, with our APIs and our pharmaceuticals, the rare earth metals, the vitamins and minerals that go into our livestock feed, and the trace elements that go into our fertilizers all come from China. We're in the process of moving that out of China. That economic pressure will get them to pay attention.
One final, very quick question for you. While the stakes are high, I think this is the point where China is most vulnerable and where we can make a move to recalibrate the relationship with China. Is that correct?
That is correct, and they need to understand that President Trump doesn't have play in him.
Yeah.
He is serious about what he does.
All right. Congressman Yoho, we actually have a link to your op-ed on the website. We'll encourage people to take a look at that. Thanks so much for taking time to join us today.
Thank you, Tony, for what you do. Bye.
All right. Congressman Ted Yoho, in fact, as I mentioned, we've got his piece at TonyPerkins.com.